And Napa Valley was closer to 1940 than it was to 1980 in 1960. It was still, there wasn't a wine before Yountville, really. It was an unpaved road, a gravel road. Certainly there were no restaurants.
All that changed in 1976 when a wine tasting in Paris, staged by two expats, Patricia Gallagher, an American writer living in France, and Stephen Spurrier, a British wine salesman, put California on the map.
Paris Tasting was an event that came about through Stephen Spurrier, who was this kind of eccentric wine merchant based in Paris. He was looking for ways to promote his wines, and given that it was the bicentennial year of the United States of America, he decided to have a tasting with some American wines and to taste them against the French wines.
The media assumed it would be a sleepy little event. Instead, Saturday, May 24th, 1976 rocked the world of French wines and brought Napa Valley world attention.
I heard about the Paris tasting first when I got an invitation to attend it, and like every other journalist in Paris at the time, I said, this is a non-story. Nobody's going to ever write a story because everybody knew that France made the best wines in the world.
Tabor was the only one to get the scoop. His article for Time, Judgment of Paris, spread the news around the world. The story began when the pair set off for America to handpick 6 California wines for their tasting.
You've got Warren Winiarski, who sort of embodies the American dream of packing up his family and setting off to pursue something that he loves and wants to do. You have Mike Gergich, who is a great immigrant story, who, born and raised in Eastern Europe, comes to America through Canada because he can't even get a visa to come to America. He comes from a winemaking family and sets off to make great wine, and does.
Winiarski made wine for Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. Gergich was the winemaker for Chateaux Montelena, owned by Jim Barrett.
I really thought they were just getting some wine so they could have a nice party or something. So we said, yeah, okay, they're going to have a tasting in Paris. And I said, well, what the heck, why not? We're Americans and we'll send our wine. And Stephen was going around getting other wineries.
The road to recognition wasn't easy for the Napa growers. Guys like Jim Barrett and Warren Winiarski weren't born on the land. They were lawyers and professors.
I just wanted to get closer to the soil and smell, watch the grass grow and hopefully the grapes, and see the sun come up and get out of the big city, quite frankly. But I didn't quit my day job because I figured this thing could be a huge flop.
These California winemakers, like the French, didn't think much of the tasting competition. They all knew who was going to win.
It was not a significant event. It was just something we gave wine to.
It went out of our minds. We weren't expecting anything. So everything that happened was more or less a surprise after that.
Spurrier and Gallagher bought Chardonnays and Cabernet Sauvignons, then turned to the California winemakers to help them get the wines to Europe.
He got a group of people who, including some vintners, who were going to France on a tennis and winery tour, and they took the wines as hand luggage with them on their plane.
We physically carried them, lugging them around, in those six-pack dealers, and then delivered them when we got off the plane. And we thought, well, good riddance. We're not having to lug this stuff around anymore.
The tasting was staged at an historic Paris landmark.
Well, the Intercontinental was one of the most famous hotels in Paris. It was just off the Rue de Rivoli, just down the street from the Louvre Museum. The wealthiest of the wealthiest could stay there. I remember going in that day. I walked in, at that point they were just setting up the tables. Waiters in tuxedos were setting up the tables for the tasting.
8 of the 10 judges that day were an elite group of France's top wine tasting experts, including Odette Kahn, doyenne of the wine writers.
Stephen was able to get those judges because of the reputation that he had built in the French wine circles. And so kind of everybody knew Stephen, especially everybody that was in the industry.
He didn't tell them what the wines were, but he had a group of Chardonnays produced in Burgundy, France, and California that he tasted first, and then he tasted a group of red wines based on Cabernet Sauvignon from Bordeaux as well as California.
These wines were judged absolutely blind. They even decanted the bottles into no-name bottles. So you know, usually you put a brown bag around the bottle, but they even transferred the wine to no-name bottles, so there was no chance of anybody even have an inkling of what it could be.
Well, he had some incredible wines from France. They were recognized as being top quality wines, no question about it.
The judges Finally, Tabor realized he had a big story on his hands. He called Jim Barrett, who was on the wine tour in France. He had won the top prize for whites.
I walked out and picked up the phone, and he said, "This is George Tabor of Time Magazine." Well, that's the who part of it, and that he worked for Time Magazine. Everybody knew Time Magazine. It was a huge thing. And I was more interested in what he then said, which was, you know, you just won the Paris tasting. And I want to say, hot damn. But he says, what's your reaction? Like you're asking questions. And I said, I thought to myself, my mind was just racing. I thought, if I say the wrong thing, they're going to kick all of us out of France if I shoot my big mouth off. And furthermore, if I do that, they won't let me back into the Napa Valley. So I was really, really kind of thinking about it, and I said, well, not bad for kids from the sticks. And he says, well, how did this happen? And I thought, I said, well, we're building on the shoulders of giants.
When George Tabor's story hit the newsstands, the California wine industry was born. People were buying California wines not just across the United States, but around the world. The change across the Atlantic was dramatic. The Napa landscape and the lives of the winemakers were never the same again.
The prunes and the pears and the walnuts were taken out and vineyards were planted. This was the golden age because we now had a standard. We now had, you know, we had this Paris tasting that it was proven that California could produce wines that were appreciated. And of course, then sales increased. We started to export. All of that happened. And tourists, and tourists.
I'm Ziggy the Wine Gal, and I'm in residence here at Chateaux Montelena with the ultimate father-daughter team, Bo and Remi Barrett. How you guys doing?
We're doing good,
Doing good, thanks. Yeah. Great. Well, I think we need to pass the wine around, huh?
Yeah, so let's get
we're
going.
going to start with the 2012 Chateaux Montelena Chardonnay, Napa Valley. One of my all-time favorite quaffers, I have to say. Let's see how this is smelling and tasting. We're thinking about the holidays right now and family traditions and things that happen around the holiday table, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about this incredible Chardonnay and just some of the things that fulfill your holiday table and what you guys do around the holidays.
The holidays are one of the things we do. Like I think the Cabernet, I think the crab is a big deal in Northern California. You know, crab season is going to open this week,
right?
And really for Christmas and New Year's, typically we'll have crab, and so the Chardonnay is just epic,
perfect.
Perfect with it's like that all that California. The good thing about our ocean here, it gives us beautiful products too. You know, whether it's the crab and the salmon, they both work great. And so that's the one that I would say with the Chardonnay was the primary one. You know, with the turkey, because we shoot wild turkeys because they're, they eat our grapes in the vineyard, so we get even. And, so in November,
and that's what you have for Thanksgiving dinner.
And we get Thanksgiving, and sometimes Christmas if we're lucky enough. But that's why so that's really more of a red wine, even though it's a bird. But the Chardonnay
I like
really
the Chardonnay with turkey too.
Yeah, well, the wild turkey is quite a bit stronger.
I mean, I can't imagine with the diversity of your dinner table that you wouldn't have more than one wine glass at every place.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Mention the people that are joining on camera. Okay, all right. Is that true? Yeah.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Burrow down in the cellar and pull out a couple special things, and then we have a mix of newer things that we're excited about too. So like for my mom's wine, which is La Serena, we have a brand new Grenache, so we're really excited to try that this year. I think it's going to be really good with turkey and cranberry sauce. But we do like to pull out some older wines too, some magnums of Chardonnay and stuff like that to welcome people to our house.
So I was going to say, what we do is, our Chardonnay is basically designed to age. It's one of the few American wines that are Chardonnay that are made to age. So the magnums of Chardonnay are just spectacular because that's really what it's designed for. So typically 7 or 10 years old is our Chardonnay. And there'll be more than one open in the course of an evening. That's what we like, the nice aged Chardonnay. So that's really is a tradition with us. And if the 12 was your wedding year, you should definitely get some mags because they last a long time. We like 20 years sometimes. They're just excellent aging for Chardonnay.
Well, and
the more as like the big gets all the press. But the Chardonnay here in Napa is super. The reason it kind of rules the world is so reliable. Every year the Chardonnay is good. So the Chardonnay in 12 was really kind of, it's not really remarkable being super excellent like the reds or the anomaly, because the whites here generally are quite great. They always get, the Chardonnay always gets ripe. So then it gets to finesse things. It's basically how cold it is at night. And so the 12 is a really good vintage because it was kind of colder at night and kind of a delayed vintage. And that helps the Chardonnay a lot. It's quite a bit, makes it age better with the more acid. So it's a pretty good one for like the agers. So that's what I say, get a mag and you'll be happy.
That's right.
Yeah, well, Magnum is really only 2 bottles.
Right.
And if you have at our house, typically 10 or 12 people for dinner, you can go through, Magnums.
Oh, I
an astonishing clip. So the Magnums are good, but in whites, there are no antioxidants. So when you bottle a white wine, it gets the same amount of oxygen exposure through the cork that it would get in a 750, but it ages, it's exponential, so it ages exponentially longer. So a half bottle would last, 1/7 the time, but a Magnum will last 7 times longer. It's quite remarkable. So it really makes a bigger difference. In red wines in general, Magnums, it's a very fun and party and it's celebratory, but I don't think the aging really affects big red wines like our Cabernet as much because they're just so loaded with antioxidants. They protect themselves.
Right.
It started as a cash flow product to get the Cabernet going. And the second one out of the gate took off when the Paris tasting. So we kind of got married to that style, and it's been successful for us now for 40 years. And the Cabernet, when we started selling the 78 Cab in 82, for years and years, we were known as a Cabernet house, and we kept making the Chardonnay quietly in this kind of reserve style where all the other California Chardonnays went to the more opulent, whether it's the Rombauer, KJ style, that softer, more user-friendly Chardonnay. We always made the lean, traditional white Burgundy Chardonnay, and that really helped us get the Cabernet program going. And it really wasn't until the 30th anniversary of the Paris tasting, George Tabor wrote the book, The Judgment of Paris, and really the film came out, that our Chardonnay kind of got to be super popular again. So we always had made the wine. It just got, now we find ourselves that we're renowned for the Chardonnay again because people went back to that style, that pure vineyard style flavor, not so much oak, not so much butter, not so rich and the country club Chardonnay, but more of a traditional white wine. So we find ourselves in a position where it's really strong for us that we have this. If you think about white wine making as a watercolor painting where you can paint well, and red wine as sculpture, we do that well too. So it's not, they're two different media. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Wow, I like the analogy with the painting.
Yeah, well, when you're making white wine, if you think about the white, the texture of the media that you're going to paint on, but the winemaker adds color to it. Well, I'm going to use this yeast, or I'm going to pick a little bit riper, get some botrytis. So you're always adding a piece to it, but what you pay with it is the fresh fruit. The white goes away every time. So in a minimalist Chardonnay like this, there's lots of the fruit, and there's not that many of the colors. And if you do a malolactic, that's like spraying color over the whole canvas. Right. There is no more white. So this is just in a pure winemaking sense, if you think about white wine, and it doesn't have the antioxidants, the phenol, the tannin, the chemical structure to protect it. And that's why the allegory I use, the metaphor I use is making red wine as a sculpture, because you have that tannin to give it more depth and more time.
More length, yeah. Got it. Wow, well, thank you very much. All right, Amy.
We have some questions from the online audience.
Oh, we do.
Awesome. Go ahead and take them.
All right, what do we got here? Let's see. Okay.
I didn't bring my reading glasses, so I'm not reading that one.
Benito Wine has a question for Remi. What was the first Thanksgiving and or Christmas that you got to try wine?
Basically as far back as I can remember, which is, I can't speak to before I can remember, but yeah, basically as I can remember, when we were kids, we had these really cute little tiny wine glasses that were sort of made for dessert wines, but they were like the perfect little kid-sized wine glasses. So my sister and I got to use those little glasses, and we would just put in like 2 drops of wine and then fill the rest up with water. So we were able to toast with the family and really be included. And I think that was really awesome. We always loved that, and it made us
That's
feel
a great
really
question.
Yeah,
Everybody
it was a lot of
wants to
fun.
know.
So ever since then, it's been a big part of our tables.